Officers to this meeting of the Standards Committee, which has been convened as a remote meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. The meeting agenda pack can also be viewed on the Council's website. Everyone participating in the meeting will be attending from remote locations. Members must keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. However, all attendees should keep their microphones off until invited to speak. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak by pressing the hands up icon. And I will now proceed with the agenda business. So first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Councillor Williams, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I'll have to leave the meeting at 10:30, but for a work call. But I'll dive back in as quickly as I can.
Thank you for that. And obviously we're missing one, but no other apologies. I'm taking. Michael.
No, Chair.
Kelly's just disappeared again for a minute. Okay. So item 2 is to receive any declarations of personal and prejudicial interest from members or officers in accordance with the provisions of the Members' Code of Conduct adopted on the 1st of September 2008. Councillor Williams, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I have personal interest because I'm married to one of the group leaders. I'll let you work out which one.
Thank you for that. I think we can deduce that one. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, then we'll move forward to item 3, which is the standards of conduct. I'm not sure if Kelly is going to rejoin us and just quickly talk through the background to this report, or Michael. If not, I can give a summary if needed. Shall we just wait? Do you know if Kelly's got problems?
I'll just check where Kelly's gone. She might be having technical issues, so I'll just check if you bear with me a second.
Okay, thank you. If she's not back in a couple of minutes, I'll check with Michael that he's there and then we'll continue. So just bear with us, please. Councillor Gavin Thomas, are you online?
Yes, I'm just having a bit of trouble with my laptop a second. I've joined on my phone, but I'm trying to transfer it over, so I should be able to join properly in 2 minutes.
Okay, so just for the purpose of the recording, Gavin Thomas, Councillor Thomas, the independent council, local council member, has joined the meeting. Kelly, you're back. So are you wanting to talk through this report or just move myself?
Just very briefly, Chair, just to give a brief introduction to the report. So the committee will be aware of the duties placed upon you as a Standards Committee and on political group leaders under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021. Leaders of political groups have a duty to take steps to promote and maintain high standards of conduct of their members. Under the relevant regulations, a political group is constituted when myself is notified that 2 or more members wish to be treated as a political group. And for the purposes of today, I've been informed that there are 3 political groups within BCBC. They are Labour, with the group leader, Councillor John Spanswick, Bridgend County Independents, group leader, Councillor Amanda Williams, and the Democratic Alliance group, whose group leader is Councillor Ross Penhale-Thomas. The duty recognises those in positions of leadership and influence within the council should have responsibility for combating bullying and harassment amongst elected members and staff, and must act as a positive role model. The Act also requires leaders of political groups to cooperate with the Standards Committee. The functions of the Standards Committee includes monitoring compliance by group leaders with the duties imposed on them. And in order to do this, group leaders are required to report compliance to the Standards Committee. It's recommended that you as a committee now consider the reports which are appended at appendices 1 to 3 and discuss with the relevant group leaders and then provide any feedback you consider necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So moving through to Appendix 1, we'll take the reports as they are presented in the paper. So the first report is from the Labour group and the report is from Councillor John Spanswick. So if I just give you, we've obviously had time to read the report. If you just want to give us a brief summary, and then I'll open it up for some questions or queries, and then we'll move on to the next report if people are happy with that approach. Yeah, Councillor Spanswick.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As attached Appendix 1, my report for the last year, and we have stated there we've implemented previous recommendations from the Standards Committee that every monthly meeting, regular meeting we have of the group, early in the agenda is the item on standards, code of conduct, how we behave in public life, and that's stressed at every meeting. I'm not aware of any issues we've had with any members being reported for any failure to comply with the standards and code of conduct in the last year. And there's encouragement both from myself and the Deputy Leader. We do our regular one-to-one meetings, the Deputy Leader with all non-executive group members, and I do it with all cabinet members. And that's been working well. It's not something that's been done across Wales, and all authorities have been trying to find out sort of best practice, but it's something we're trying to do here in Bridgend to make sure there's a training plan and regular opportunities for any members with any problems or issues or queries that can be addressed confidentially and dealt with. There has been, as I said in the report, unfortunately still negative issues and comments, personal stuff on social media, which seems to be the way the world operates. It's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned, and there's been quite a lot of personal attack on myself for the last several months, which is not acceptable again, but that appears to continue, hopefully getting less as we move on. And as far as I'm concerned, as leader of the council, my door's open to any members of any grouping or none to come and discuss any code of conduct issues, standards they feel that need changing, improving across the council. But I'm working hard to make sure the Labour councillors comply, and I would like to say something whether it's appropriate now or not. I am slightly disappointed in being accused of bullying in the leader of the Bridgend County Independents, and I can clarify that if members want to know, because I have made a formal apology privately if it was felt as bullying, but it was a strong challenge about another member.
Councillor Spanswick, this is probably not the time and place to talk about individual incidences, and I think in terms of we're taking an overall approach to how each party adopts and complies with the code of conduct.
Yes.
So I appreciate there may be an ongoing issue. There are issues across, not just in Bridgend, but we're just talking here about how we comply promote
I'm just saying,
compliance. Yeah,
in a public meeting, I've been
appreciate
accused of bullying. I would like a
I
right to
appreciate
reply at some
that.
point.
yeah. So can I just come to Kelly first of all, just to clarify if there's any data that obviously it shows that there's no source and level of complaints at the moment, but you may have other information. Just for your information, obviously the Public Service Ombudsman provides a report annually, which obviously we haven't received for the past year, which I think the Standards Committee will have at their next meeting. So I just want clarity from Kelly if there is any other instances that you've been made aware of that we're not aware of.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I have dealt with a number of informal complaints across the chamber, largely Labour and the Bregenne County Independents. I don't think I've had to deal with any for the Democratic Alliance group. In addition, I am aware that there have been some complaints to the Ombudsman in relation to both those members from both those groups. We're not aware yet whether they are being taken forward and investigated more formally, but those complaints have gone in during this year that we are considering.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So that applies to obviously all the reports we're going to consider. It's useful to have that context up front. Can I just ask any of the Standards Committee members, have they got any questions or queries in relation to the report? Points they'd like to raise? Councillor Walter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I've probably asked the same question to all three group leaders. So for Councillor Spanswick, what's the one thing that you think could be done to improve overall standards of conduct amongst all elected members within the County Borough Council?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Walter. From my point of view, it's one word, and that's respect. And that's something we all need to have for one another. For a difficult job we all put ourselves forward, volunteer for. And there needs to be a lot more respect for one another, regardless of politics, in our personal lives as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Roy, you have a question?
Yeah, is it possible just to keep questions until the end of the full report? So you probably generate any questions will probably apply to all three leaders. Is that possible? Yeah.
I'm happy with that, unless there's any specific points of clarification about the report itself. We'll take questions at the end, if everyone's happy with that.
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Okay, so moving on to the next report. It is Councillor Ross Penhale-Thomas, Democratic Alliance. So over to yourself.
Fab, thank you, Chair. Diolch am y cyfle. Thanks for the opportunity to address members of the Standards Committee this morning. I very much appreciate the opportunity. As in previous years, Chair, this is quite a beige report. Beige in terms of standards is very good, I consider. No major issues from my group, though we are only 8 in number. We are quite a diverse group, so for the recollection of Standards colleagues, we have a mix of geographical representation, age, and also long-standing members, alongside some very fresh members who were elected in 2022. That's actually of enormous use in the group in terms of sharing experience, but also some new and potentially radical ideas. And I'm looking at other members of council in terms of who they may come from. I think that's probably well understood. In terms of the most recent changes in my group, members have been shuffled around to sit on different committees. They have all either undertaken various training or will be doing so as those committees meet in the coming months. You can see from my report that I've logged an informal incident, and that was dealt with informally, as I think most of these incidents should be, via way of a phone call, and that wasn't taken any further. So that was the easiest way of dealing with that. No members of my group have been the subject of any complaints that are formal or requiring local resolution. As Councillor Spanswick has said, I also have an open door policy with my group in terms of addressing any issues, and I have a good working relationship with the monitoring officer in seeking advice either for myself or for members of my group should they not know what process to follow before, during, or certainly after a meeting. Very good working relationship with both leaders, independently and as part of a group as well, meeting together as group leaders on a fairly regular basis, and very much looking forward to having the new Chief Exec joining those meetings as well. So yes, Chair, very beige report, but sorry but not sorry for that in the circumstances in which we meet. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So unless there's any points for clarification on that, we will move on. Okay, so we move on to Councillor Amanda Williams from the Bridgend County Independents.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I firstly apologise that, one, I've got system problems, so if I go a bit funny, it's probably because of my signal, and two, I'm starting to lose my voice. I've got a sore throat. So, with regards to complaints, it's difficult for me to understand, and I would like for us group leaders, particularly where we know that there have been some local resolution complaints, to try and have the data from officers if possible, because we have to obviously rely on individuals to tell us about complaints, and we're not always made aware of complaints, particularly ombudsman complaints. They're kept private, so I have to ask members, have they had a complaint against them? So obviously the complaints that I've been made aware of are the 3 ombudsman complaints that I've been told are not being taken any further, or have gone for a local resolution as a result of not an investigation, but a decision not to investigate and go down that route. So there may be others to go on to there that are for informal local resolution that I'm not aware of. So I think as group leaders it would be good to understand it so that we can make sure our figures tally with those of Kelly's. Training, again, we've had some movements within committees, and I always make sure that those move into committees have the relevant training for that. We still have a couple of issues with some of the online training with accessibility, and I think it might be worthwhile me sitting down with the individual and officers to understand exactly what the problem is, in particularly those with sight issues, in seeing what's on the screen. So I think maybe that's a way forward. But I do continue to remind everyone about behaviour. I do continue to remind them about training, and following the last meeting we had, we added it as a standing item as well on our group, on our monthly group group meetings.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Okay. Before we, is there any points of clarification on the report for Councillor Williams that anyone has any queries on? No. Before we sort of open the floor, can I just come to Kelly a minute in terms of that comment that was made about data? Is that something that can be addressed, or just want to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. In the majority of cases, the group leader will be copied into any email correspondence, but obviously that is at the discretion of the member. It's the member's data, so they need to be the one to start copying in their group leader. If there's an occasion where the group leader isn't copied in, I will ask those members whether they are happy for me to update their group leaders. Generally, they say yes, and then the group leaders are added into the email correspondence. It's the same with the Ombudsman, really. The onus is on the member to inform their group leader of any issues that are involving them. Obviously, once it becomes more formal and it's in the public domain, I can then share that information with the group leaders as appropriate.
So just thinking about that point specifically, is that something that you as group leaders want to sort of reiterate potentially with your own members? I appreciate just so increase your awareness, increase those relationships, so then you know up front of any issues that might exist. and therefore you can manage that internally. I've seen a flurry of hands going up, but Councillor Gavin Thomas came with his hand first. I'm not sure that it's related to that point, but I'll come to you first.
Sorry, it was it was really a question maybe for Kelly and for yourself, is would it be prudent that when we do this annual discussion next year, we postponed it for 1 month so that the Ombudsman's official figures were published, so then everybody would be in the public domain and everybody would have access to the one set of figures?
We can do that. The Ombudsman report doesn't really provide that much detail. I don't think it would break it down into groups. So I'm not sure that would assist the group leaders. My view is the group leaders need to approach their members and ask them, have there been any issues that have been dealt with informally or via the Ombudsman? I'm happy to postpone the report if members think that would be helpful.
Maybe we just sort of take that out at the end once we've had the discussion as to whether that's a way forward. So I'm going to come to Councillor Amanda Williams first, as your hand was raised first. Do you want to respond to that sort of discussion?
Yeah, thanks very much. The Ombudsman complaints are more, they're clearer, because you know if you've had an Ombudsman complaint against you. The informal complaints that are internal, sometimes people don't really understand, is it marked as an informal, is it not, or is it just a discussion? So I think there was, for me, with my group members, there was a lot of discussion as to whether it would be logged as an internal local resolution complaint, or it was just a disagreement, if you know what I'm saying. So to make sure our information tallies, we don't need to know who it's about or which members, but it would be interesting. I think also from the other point of view is if Kelly turned around and said, actually from your group we've got 6, well 6 is a high number to me, and I would then be going back to my group and saying, why have we got 6 of these that have been dealt with as this? Because that's showing that behaviour has not improved, and so it's a way of us actually monitoring how things are being recorded and how we can improve on that. Thank you.
Kelly, do you want to respond to that first, or shall I hear from the other leaders first?
I'm happy to share what information I can. I will repeat, the onus is on the member to be sharing that. I would say anything where the complaint is referred to me should be considered as an informal complaint. Again, it's becoming then, if it goes into the local resolution process, which we have had a few, then that definitely hits the trigger. But I'm happy to do a short briefing note so the group leaders are clear what we would consider to be an informal complaint, a formal complaint, and then obviously they'll be aware it was an Ombudsman complaint.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's along similar lines with Councillor Amanda Williams. I'm a little bit confused because you don't know what you don't know. As I sit here today, as far as I'm aware within my group, I'm not aware of any complaints. Yet the monitoring officer saying, I think that there may be some complaints that haven't been, so I'm not clear of what complaints there may be. If they're Ombudsman complaints, quite often the letter states it's confidential and not to be shared. So I'm not sure how I would get to know if there are members that haven't shared personally the fact that there's a complaint against them. How am I going to know if the monitoring officer has information but I don't? So how can I put I'm worried now my report is not accurate if there are members within my group that are being reported but I'm not aware of.
Okay. Kelly?
Chair, do you want me to?
Yeah, you can respond.
So generally, the members will copy in their group leaders, as I said, but that is an issue for the members. If they don't, I would always say to them, are you happy for me to copy in your group leader? Generally, they say yes, and then the group leader would be copied in. Very rarely they would say no. But again, I can only reiterate, the obligation is on the member to tell their group leader if there are any issues of conduct. The obligation isn't on myself because it's personal data to share that. What I can do going forward without sharing any confidential data is I can keep a running tally of informal complaints I get, and then when we come to quarterly, I can tell group leaders that I've had X number of complaints or queries from members relating to members of their groups. but from my recollection, group leaders would have been copied in to the ones I've dealt with recently anyway.
Okay, I'm going to come to Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on this point, there's a clear expectation among my group members that I'm informed of anything that may transpire, if not from a supportive point of view, then purely from an administrative point of view to support me in my duties as group leader. I appreciate I've only got 8 members in total, but yeah, there's clearly some disparity here about what's considered an informal complaint. Obviously, I've registered one informal complaint, which possibly in the wider realms of understanding what an informal complaint is, probably isn't considered an informal complaint at all. It was a conversation that took place between myself and another group leader. So I think clarity and guidance on that moving forward would be really useful. Thanks.
Okay, I'll come to Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to sort of play devil's advocate in a way that if Kelly was to provide group leaders with a tally and a number, could that actually lead to a sort of witch hunt where people would be outed to try and find out who had made those complaints? Would it just be more useful if we just said complaints had been made, yes or no, rather than an actual number?
I'm just going to make a more sort of general point, and it's suppose it is playing devil's advocate, is that each of you as group leaders are responsible for sort of your group and the communication with your group and helping them with training and development. And you talked about respect. You know, is it the onus on each individual member? And that's maybe something that group leaders can take some ownership of, to encourage openness and transparency. Because as Councillor Thomas has said, it's about that being able to support people through anything that may follow. It's being about awareness and being able to get ahead of the game and manage any potential issues. And, you know, if there's an issue in a work environment, you'd want to know about it as a boss so that you can help those individuals manage it and take them through procedures or offer additional training and support if needed. So I'm just making a more general point in terms of, yes, Councillor Thomas only has 8 members, so that may be more easy to manage. You've all got individual members. Are there other people within your teams that can take some of that responsibility for managing those processes and really driving that awareness? And I suppose the expectation of members within a group to share and be open and transparent about issues that may have arisen which comply with the Nolan principles. So, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, on that basis, and given what Kelly has said in the past, I wonder if all members could have some training to set out exactly what constitutes each strand of a complaint, so that then the onus would be on each individual member, but they will know. So when I ask them how many complaints have been made against you, or you were aware, they will know, they'll be able to say, they can log it, and I can log it then, because we had a discussion of, is this a complaint or isn't it? Because I was having an argument with X member, and you know, you might even find that's internal within groups as well. I'm not saying it is, but you know, you'll know then who's had a disagreement, because quite often there's disagreements, particularly when politics is involved, and we don't always have the same opinions. And I think that's where some of the bad behaviour comes from. It's your different opinions, but it's so that they can understand then exactly what is dealt with and classed as a complaint and what isn't. Because for me, that was the whole conversation. It took a long time to get out of each member, because they were trying to work out what was and what would have been logged as an informal complaint and not.
Kelly, you've talked about what you can do in terms of categorising that. I'm not sure in terms of training, whether it's just a briefing note at this stage.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to put together some categorisation and a briefing note. I don't think it necessarily needs training. It's, you know, if I put it down in black and white, it should be quite easy really, and members should all be aware of the code. They've all had the training, so they should know whether a complaint is referencing what's considered a code of conduct issue. But I'll do the categorisation and I'll get that circulated to everybody.
I'm just going to make another suggestion, and I think we're dealing with the complaints here when they arise. And I suppose taking a step back from that, we as Standards Committee do not want cases in front of us. So I'm keen to really drive what we can do to raise standards amongst our members. There is the code of conduct training, but there is a personal responsibility to work with members and take ownership of their own behaviours. Can I just ask a question in terms of Councillor Thomas? You'd said that obviously you did TRESH members training. Can you just outline a little bit of how you've dealt with that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? What
Yeah.
was training? Sorry, Chair.
I think you said that you had quite a few new members come on board and you'd instigated some, is that the recognised training or some briefings with them of what they expected?
Sorry, Chair, that's the formal training that's available. So if you're going on statutory committees such as licensing and development control, for example, there's been quite a bit of churn in my group in terms of moving members around onto different committees. So it's the statutory training that's available via the local authority.
Okay. And I suppose the point relates to, we've had a couple of cases and there are more community council cases where there are new members coming in, and it is that you can go on the training, but it is about the expectations of those members who may not have worked in a public domain before, in that public environment, of the difference between them as a councillor and them as Mrs. Jones who lives in, I don't know, Lancome, and what the expectations of those individuals in those two scenarios are. I'm keen to understand the support that's given to any new members or constant support to members to try and help them get through that demarcation between those two roles. Anybody have any comments about how they manage that? Roy, I'll come back to you because I'll take Councillor Spanswick because I think it's a response to my question, and then I'll come to you, Roy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just it's part and parcel of a normal sort of regular one-to-one meetings of my group members as part of their development and support, but also stressing the need to understand the code of conduct and comply with it. And that's an ongoing process, but we do have the online mandatory training modules, but it's more the personal one-to-one meetings where that is stressed and hopefully pick up any issues before they become a problem.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor Thomas before I come to Roy, and then we'll close off this point and move on to Roy. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I briefly referenced the diversity in my group of long-standing and newer members, and that experience does really help in terms of the support for newer members in terms of how to guide their scrutiny work, guide their accountability work, and to immerse them in the life of the council, essentially. But that also helps in terms of long-standing members espousing those values and the Nolan principles in the way that we conduct ourselves, and I think that's really, really important. So that diversity of long-standing and newer members really does help. And again, I appreciate that I've got something of a smaller group than others.
Thank you for that. And I'll come to Councillor Williams.
Apologies, I was thrown out of the meeting briefly, but I've managed to get back in. I got back in with my phone whilst I got my laptop up again. Yeah, for me, it's everything that I think that Councillor Spanswick and Councillor Thomas have said, that, there are newer members, but I think it's also the perception, and I've been trying to get through that sometimes people perceive something as a code of conduct breach, whereas I wouldn't personally see that as a code of conduct, and I think it's trying to manage people's perception of things as well as obviously their inexperience. So for me, that's the other thing that I have to keep reminding people of, is you might think that that's that, or you might be extremely upset by the comment, but at the end of the day, there's the first thing that they say councillors have to have thicker skins, but also it's people's perception of it, because the person who said or done something might not realise that you've taken it that way as well. So I've had to be managing that, and I think it is a work in progress, but it is getting better.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. I am going to come to Roy now. Sorry for holding you for a minute, Roy.
That's no problem. Having read all the reports on the group leaders, I've made a couple of observations, and I got a couple of questions as well. So I see that all group leaders comment on how they encourage their elected members to complete and attend training. And I think that's a very positive position, and I think it could only improve the professional approach of elected members to council matters. I'm also pleased to see that the group leaders have introduced the standard item on the agenda regarding conduct. I was going to ask what sort of for clarification on sorts of things that they actually say to their members. That might be interesting for the rest of the committee. My first question is to all group members and possibly Kelly. There's a way forward. We've got this idea that you've all taken on board of a standard item or a standard item on the agenda on conduct. Would it be possible to expand this idea of a standard item on the agenda to full council meetings and all committees? I mean, I don't know if there are barriers to introducing this sort of this process. That's the sort of first question, first of all. So we could answer those first. This idea of expanding it to the full council, I don't know if it's possible. We'd have to probably, if it's possible through democratic services. I'm not quite sure what the process is. So,
Do you want to respond to that, Kelly?
Thank you, Chair. It would depend on how far you wanted to take it, Roy. So we could put on the agenda. I mean, we would need to slightly tweak the constitution, but we could put on all agendas. Just a reminder to all members. You know, you're expected to comply with the code of conduct. We could just put that as a standard item. There wouldn't be a debate. If you wanted something more, you know, a debate or a discussion at each committee, I think that would be difficult, particularly the more regulatory committees like licensing and planning, because they got so much business they have to get to. I don't think there would be a merit to it really. And again, that would need to be a constitutional change, but I'm more than happy to look at just putting a standard paragraph on there, just reminding members of their obligations under the code.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about, Kelly. Most group leaders have mentioned the word respect this morning, so it would just be an opening statement just to remind members of the principles, the Nolan principles, and to listen to other members and take on board their opinion and the respect their opinion. Just a simple opening statement, an introductory statement, really. So I don't know what other group leaders think of that idea, if it's possible.
Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Roy. I think it's a useful suggestion that in an ideal world we shouldn't have to remind people. It's there as part and parcel of the job we do and complying with the code of conduct, but we do need to do that. And if it's part and parcel of a standard, not so much an item, but just a reminder at every agenda. From a group point of view, I'm wondering whether we should expand not just the fact that about complying with the code of conduct, but actually add into to what I do and perhaps other group leaders, reminding members that if there are any complaints as well, what we touched on earlier, that they need to come and speak. You know, the group leader should be made aware, and they should be reminded every month perhaps to make group leaders aware of any issues going on in the background that may form complaints.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spanswick. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. For me, having it as an item on an agenda would make it difficult, given the fact that a lot of it has to be confidential. But I think in every meeting, we start with whoever is chairing the meeting. They start going through the procedures, if they add it to that procedure, to remind everyone. But I think maybe going forward, whilst we do discuss it in group leaders' behaviour, Councillor Spanswick and I had a really good meeting recently where we worked out a way forward, you know, because of all of the problems that have been in the past with members of our groups not always seeing eye to eye. And I think it's been a positive improvement in our relationship. And I think that maybe going forward, in group leaders, we could discuss these complaints and the numbers of complaints between us so that we're aware, and then we can hopefully get into it and resolve the issues ourselves with the local resolution and deal with it there. So when we come to you each year, we can tell you exactly what we've done, and we should see the improvements there, and we should see that there's no confusion over what's a complaint or not. And I think that would build on all of the relationships between the groups.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. And that's really positive that there have been some constructive discussions. I mean, between you, and that those continue. So we want to make this. We don't want to be busy as a standards committee. We want to sort of see good, honest debate, but with that respect at absolute core. So thank you for that update. Roy, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, it's just going back to Councillor Sandwick and Councillor Williams. It's just, I understand from what you said, Councillor Williams, it could prolong sort of matters if we've got a long agenda, but all I'm suggesting is just a simple introductory statement, just to remind all elected members just to respect each other's opinion. I just think it might be a way forward for sort of. I was going to also suggest, and I don't know if this is possible, whether we, as a standards committee, we recommend the same idea to community councils, that they have a standard item, but I don't know whether that's possible because they might have their own constitutions and we might be straying too far beyond our sort of our powers. That's it for me. Thank you.
Any response, Kelly, on the comment about community councils? Because we're aware that that is where some of the challenges that we've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can certainly write to the clerks just to let them know that this discussion has taken place in Standards Committee. I can send them the link, and then I can say that the committee have suggested that they have it as a standard item, or at least a reminder of adherence to the code, but it will be a matter for each individual council whether they take that up.
Just a question, do the chairs of the community councils meet at any point? Kelly, do we know if the chairs of each individual council, do they have a sharing of best practice or meeting at all?
There is a forum. I don't know how well attended it is. I think it's a clerk and a chairs forum, but I think Gavin may have some more information because I think he sits on the Town and Community Council.
I think his hand has been raised, so I'll come to Gavin.
Yes, there is. There's probably two. There's one that the BCBC organised a Town and Community Council forum, and there's also a chairs and clerks forum that the councils run themselves. It isn't very well supported, if I'm honest, and it isn't really somewhere where standards and that sort of agenda are pushed. So yeah, so I think it's not a really worthwhile forum, really.
Okay. So there's no opportunity to use either of those vehicles to promote or to give a message. I
think we could. I think it could maybe a presentation. Maybe one of the standards committee members could give some presentation there. It isn't. I don't think it's valued by a lot of the town and community councils. And so, given the number of community councils in the area and the attendance, there was less than 10% of the councils attended the last one.
Okay, thank you for that, Gavin. Councillor Spanswick, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think what Gavin just said is valid in many ways. That the Town and Community Council Forum, which I chair, hasn't exactly achieved a great deal over the years, if I'm honest. And a year's gone by really. I'm trying to change that forum to actually be useful to all town and community councils, and there's still work to be done, but I want that to become a real place to have that discussion. And I think a topic on code of conduct would be perfect to go to the next one's not scheduled till September, but as of tomorrow, the closing date, we're actually appointing a town and community council liaison officer post as well, so we'll have a dedicated officer to work between town and community councils and county borough. And I think it's the place to really discuss and have that topic for debate on, well, a regular item on the agenda, but also to have that one-off one in September or whenever we can this year, discuss the code of conduct and standards across town and community councils, because there's many issues across the county borough there. as useful for them, and the more useful it needs to be in the future, and used by all clerks and chairs if we can, to work in partnership.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spanswick. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think Roy poses a really interesting challenge. I guess my rhetorical question is what does it say about standards in public life if members participating in such meetings need to be reminded about civility and respect at the top of the hour? I think that says something. And while I appreciate and I would agree with you, if I were a member of this committee, I wouldn't want to be busy looking at poor standards of behaviour in public life. There are other mechanisms by which disrespect and crossing a line in a meeting can be dealt with outside of it possibly ending up at standards committee, which is through the chair. You know, if conduct is poor, the chair has every right to lambast that member, to tell that member off, and also to exclude that member from further contributing to the meeting. So I think that should also be considered in the wider round.
Thank you for the comments. And Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to what Councillor Spanswick was saying then about the Town and Community Forum, and I think for it to improve and for you to get the right message across to community councils, you have to have the right people sitting on those committees. I know when we split our committees, it's often those who have got a space left get the Town and Community Forum. It's never been one of those that has been the priority. Scrutiny is the priority, the 3 scrutiny committees in licensing. And so I think to get the message across, we also need to be ensuring that the right people are on that forum going forward as well.
Okay, thank you for people's discussion on that, and I appreciate it's, you know, your group leaders of the Bridgend Council, but I think there is always a knock-on effect in terms of promoting standards across the board, across all levels of community councils and Bridgend Council, and I think that thread runs through, and as a lot of councils have multiple roles, I think it's something that we do need to address. Before we go to any other questions, I've got one more comment, but I'll ask if there's any other general questions from anyone about the reports that we've heard. Okay, in one of the reports, I think it might be Councillor Spanswick, but apologies. There was a comment about community councils and the role of the Standards Committee visiting community councils to observe the meetings. This has been on our agenda for the last, as long as I've been involved, a couple of years. We raised it again more recently, and it is something that we have, you know, we've had a list of all the councils' meetings, regularity. Between us, we're hoping to be proactive to visit some of those councils to observe, not as a threat, but just as an observe and a support mechanism. So just to reassure you that it is on our radar, and obviously it's a capacity within the committee. We'll, you know, come on to the fact that hopefully we're going to expand this. We are going to expand the Standards Committee, so we'll have more people being able to take on those roles going forward. Councillor Williams raised a hand, then I'll come to Kelly.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I raised it in my report because I feel it would be beneficial to community councillors, because our remit, whilst we can remind our group members of standards, and they should be, you know, applying good standards across whatever committees they sit on, we can't then go any further than that. We can guide people and give them guidance, but we cannot push community councillors how to act. Even community councillors who are borough councillors, we can say to them that it will have an impact on the reputation of the council, but we cannot get any further involved than that. So I think for you to go to the community council meetings, to not every one of them because you'll be extremely busy, but to pick a few, particularly where maybe those that you get most complaints from, it might encourage those members to behave better, all of them, or give them an understanding of the impact some of the things they're saying or doing is having. And so I think it would be a positive move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll come to Kelly, and then I think Councillor Spanswick wants to respond. So do you want to respond first, Kelly?
Thanks, Chair. Just to confirm, we have started that work. I think a couple of members have already been to observe meetings. I know I have been to 3 town and community meetings over the last 12 months, maybe even 6 months. And they have been the ones that we are tending to get the most complaints about during that period. So that work is underway. As we said, we can't attend them all. We will be sort of focusing on ones where we get larger numbers of complaints, but we'll also be going to ones which will be considered best practice, so that we can then bring that back and share that information to others. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It'd be ideal, I think, for the Standards Committee members to see some of the town and community councils. But if time is limited, I don't know how many actually video the proceedings each month, and it may be a quicker route on occasions to request some videos of particular monthly meetings of councils. You can actually watch at your leisure the sort of proceedings within various town and community councils without actually physically attending. What I'm not sure is the legislation, how many of them are actually recording or have to record, and whether the recordings are shared.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Kelly is able to answer that or has access to that information.
I can double check, Chair, but I don't think, well, I know they don't have the same obligations as principal council, so I don't think they have to make it publicly available. But I'll double check.
Thank you, Kelly. You know, personally, I think I've attended one over the last year or so, and I think there's a couple of others that have attended them as well. But it's definitely on our radar, so be reassured that that is something we are working on at the moment. If there are no further questions, your hand is still raised, Kelly. Have you got another point, or just not drop your hand? I'm going to go to Councillor Walter then, who's just raised his hand.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I did say that I wanted to ask the same question of all three group leaders, but I'm not sure of the relevance so much now, because I think an awful lot of useful ground's been covered. But very briefly, perhaps to Councillor Pennell-Thomas to start with, one thing that you'd like to see differently that could improve overall standards of behaviour of elected members across the borough?
Okay for me to respond, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sorry.
For me, I think conduct is imitated. So I think it's really, really important that senior members holding senior roles and also long-standing members, the duty is on them to conduct themselves with respect and civility. So especially at the beginning of a council term, it's really, really important when we have newer members joining, and they are, and of course by elections much the same. They will get a flavour of what happens in that chamber and what's considered to be standard conduct and respectful and what's not. And obviously, if they're picking up on a temperature that isn't particularly respectful or managed with civility, then that conduct will just be imitated. So I think that's super important for me. Thanks, Councillor Walter.
Great, thanks very much. And if I may, Chair, to Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thank you very much. I'll come in last. Obviously, I agree with everything that's been said previously by the other two councillors. But yeah, it's very much the same. But I would also like to see people watching back some of the videos of themselves. Maybe we could look back at meetings that we thought as group leaders were particularly childish or bad behaviour, and saying, you know, what would you think if you were watching a meeting like this? And I think it's a learning for groups to, maybe we can show them what we perceive to be the poor behaviour and say, you know, what would the public think of this? Because at the end of the day, we're here for the public, and the public are not going to be impressed with slamming tables and cheering and things like that, or people constantly, you know, trying to chip in when the chair is trying to chair a meeting and things like that. So, and I'm not talking about any particular individuals or groups, I'm saying about general behaviour, that maybe as group leaders we choose a particularly bad meeting, play it back to our group and say, is this appropriate? No, it's not. And how do we build on this? Thank you.
Yeah, some form of continuous 360 feedback is what you're saying, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walter. So, you know, there's been a lot discussed today, and I think it's been in a positive way in terms of some proactive things that can be done. Obviously, if I was to sit in this chair next year, I'd be really keen to hear how some of those ideas have been taken forward by group leaders, things that have been enacted. So that review of the video, I think, is an excellent, in the cold light of day, watching it sometimes rather than the heat of the discussion, is a really interesting perspective on a meeting, and how you, and would you show that to your mother, and how would she react if you saw people behaving in that way? So, or your best friend, what would they say to you? So I think there's something in that in terms of other people's perceptions of it. But so sitting here in a year, if your reports are written, I'd be really keen to see some of those examples of what you've talked about, how you instill respect, how you instill learning to come through in those reports in the coming year, and also that reporting and management of complaints and how you're handling that. So that's all for me. So to close this item, any other comments or questions before we move on? So with that, I thank you very much for your time this morning. I think it's a really useful exercise. So thanks very much for your time, councillors, lead of each group. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
If you want to go, feel free. We've just got a couple more items to go through.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. So we're going to move forward with the agenda. So the next item is where are we? Sorry, back to the front. The annual report. So the appointments to the Standards Committee. Kelly,
Chair,
are you?
I think it's the annual report first.
Sorry, yeah.
So the purpose of the report before you today is for you to approve your annual report for 2024-25 and to agree for this to be reported to Council. The report is attached at Appendix 1 and it outlines the membership of the committee and the purpose of the committee, as well as detailing the work that has been undertaken throughout the last year. I therefore ask you to consider that report and give approval for it to be presented to Council tomorrow. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I'll open the floor for any comments, questions on it, first of all. No. So with a show of hands is probably easiest. Are we all happy to approve that report and have it presented to Council tomorrow? So a full show of hands across the board. So we're happy for that to go forward to Council tomorrow. Thank you very much, Kelly. So the final item is in terms of the appointment to the Standards Committee. Again, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. This is to advise the committee of 2 independent member appointments to the committee, which again will be reported to full council tomorrow, the 23rd of July, for approval. We currently have 2 vacancies for independent members, and in line with the usual process, I've advertised those vacancies in the newspaper circulating in the area. A panel was convened to consider the applications and to conduct the interviews. Interviews took place on the 1st of July 2025, and I'd like to say it was a strong field, and the panel recommended that Janet Evans and Martin Daly were appointed to the vacancies. I just ask you to approve that again will go to full council tomorrow for formal confirmation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, being involved in the discussions, it was definitely 2 strong candidates. Will bring a greater diversity to the panel, which I think will be really good, and back to full strength, which again is excellent. So are we, with a show of hands, are we all happy to approve that report? Yeah, thank you. Full show of hands, so happy to approve the report. So I think that brings to the close the agenda items for today. So I'd like to say thanks very much for your time, and just to confirm the date of the next meeting, Kelly. Off the top of your head, I can't remember.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I'll get Democratic Services to circulate that information to everybody. And in the meantime, I will be offering training opportunities for the new members that are coming on, hopefully before we have the next meeting. So I'll also circulate that date to the current members to see if anybody wants any refresher training when I'm delivering it.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thanks for your time, and see you in the autumn.